Florida State football earned respect with accountability and physicality.
You are Locked On Seminoles, your daily podcast on the Florida State Seminoles. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome back to Locked On Seminoles. I am your host, Brian Smith, longtime college football recruiting analyst. Thank you for making Locked On Seminoles your first listen each and every day here on the Locked On Podcast Network. Today's show is brought to you by our friends over at Monarch Money. Take control of your life with Monarch Money. Use code Locked On College at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. Tonight's show is all about the ability for Florida State to earn respect, how they did it. And there's two primary points that I'm going to bring up numerous times: accountability and physicality. We're going to break that down throughout the show and talk about some wonderful stats to back up both points. Florida State is ranked nationally, some stats even number one in the nation. We're going to talk about it right here on Locked On Seminoles. We're eventually going to jump into the chat and talk to some of the people that are in there discussing what's going on. But first, I want to go over some of these numbers because it's pretty crazy. So again, accountability and physicality. Here's how it works. Florida State brought in new coaches that were a lot more accountable. They also brought in more people that believed in what they were doing. Norvell knew that he had to get people that he trusted, that they could blend, that they could get guys together. Norvell also knew Gus Malzahn, somebody he'd actually worked for. That was a major part of it. He also brought in people that he could figure out and put the systems together on defense that work together. All of it is accountability. And then they had to get the players to buy into that. Now, I told people I thought it'd be 2-3 years before you could really do that and have the kind of depth that you truly wanted. And I still believe that as far as the roster, there's a long way to go to maximize. But for what they have on campus today, as of the 9th of September, 2025, I don't think Florida State could do anything more than what they've done in terms of this staff getting guys to buy in. There are players that have left, been more or less told to leave. There have been returning starters and guys that played a ton last year that have been taken off the depth chart or barely play because they haven't been accountable to what the coaches want, to their standard. And it bears out, again, in these numbers. I'm going to give offensive and defensive overview numbers, and I'm going to focus more on the offense because we needed to see some positivity on the offense. But here are some of the accountability points through physicality. Florida State playing some downhill football. Running the football. These are the offensive stats first. I'll get to defense momentarily. Running the football. They are fifth in the nation. 295.5 yards per contest. Total offense. Florida State is ninth in college football, 555.5 yards per game. Passing the football, they're 39th, even though they are a predominantly running team. They haven't had a game yet where they went out and just threw it all over the yard, yet they are number 39 in the nation, still averaging 260 yards a game through the air. And then scoring, fifth in the nation, right on the dot, 54 points per contest. Florida State is lighting it up. So those are your base numbers, but it actually gets better. And here's why. Again, these are all offensive numbers. First downs, they've been grinding it out, and they played Bama. I got to keep that in mind. In game one, and played keep away. But even with that, 24.5 first downs per game, 27th in college football. Third downs, last year they were bottom 3 in college football. Well, that has certainly changed. They're 16th. 57.7% of the time, the Noles are converting on third down. That's tremendous. And then, remember how bad it was last year when they had to throw the ball? Just how disparaging it was? Guys coming free all the time. It was pretty much an embarrassment. It really was. Well, this year, sacks have given up 1, tied for 13th in the nation through their first 2 games. And then the really just fun stats. I'm a big fan of chunk yardage plays, so let's go through some of those. There are 4 of these. 2 are combined, and the last 2 are just passing. First 2 are going to be 30 and 40-yard plays, whether it's run or pass combined. First, let's go with 30. They've had 10 plays of 30 or more yards, whether it's a rush or a pass. That's good for number 2 in the nation. They've also, for 40-plus yard plays, they have 8 of them combined. Number 1 in college football. Passing plays of 30 or more yards. They have 7. Florida State is also ranked number 1 in college football. And again, passing plays of 40 or more yards, the Noles are number 1 with 6 passing plays going for 40 or more. Again, this is a rushing attack that is most often going to be the threat for Malzahn. But he said it in his opening statements in his very first press conference when he was brought to Florida State, and it's been true all the way through. Florida State's going to win with physicality and then throw the ball over your head. There are different forms of reverses, etc., that work too. Don't get me wrong. But the base is power football, draw you up, throw you over the top. That's the very bare bones approach to this. The way he does it with the mobile quarterback and with a lot of speed and some size on the outside, his offenses work really well with that. And so for that matter, Norvell, they're very close. Of course, again, Norvell learned under Malzahn. These offenses are not much fun to deal with, and they've proven it. So let's flip it to the other side. I didn't go into all the little specific stats, but this is a lot of fun too. And I'll come back through some of these again for some of you that didn't see it. Defensively, they're still playing really, really good despite they emptied the bench in the last game and didn't give up any points till the end. But they're 40th in the nation in total defense, 269 yards per game given up, 96 yards rushing, that's 44th, 173 yards per game passing, that's 51st, and scoring 10 points per game, 23rd. Florida State playing Alabama changes the metrics a little bit, but it is what it is. They've done their job and been consistent in big money plays. Look at it this way. They set the tone with their physicality. Bama came out in that first game. Opening drive, what was it? 15 plays the Crimson Tide had, scored a touchdown. Didn't look real good. Since that play, Florida State has given up a grand total of 13 points in almost 2 full games. Bama gets 10 more, and then you get 3 points for East Texas A&M. They've been pretty much lights out. They've been about as good as it can get. So my question for anybody out there, what is next for them? What is next for them? And by all means, please jump in the chat, ask questions. I'll get to the few here in just a second. Are you more excited about the offense and all the explosiveness, or what is left on the table for the defense? Let me give you an example on the defensive side. Mandrell Desir has been really good. He was like number 1 on one of the Pro Football Focus stats, grade or whatever for defensive linemen against the run or something like that. I retweeted that today on one of my accounts on X. And I'm just like, true freshman that was a 3-star guy coming in, balling out like that. Physicality, that's something that Tony talked about extensively during his fall camp press conference. I'm here for it. Accountability through physicality. Florida State has had it on both sides of the ball in the trenches. Ironically, the very area that they struggled with probably the most last year. Because when the defense got gashed, it was usually because of poor run gap fits, not wrapping up, all the little things. And then offensively, they just missed which guys they were supposed to block constantly. It was really, really bad. When I come back, I want to talk about which guys that I think are going to step up more. Then I'll jump into the chat and we'll get into more stats as we go on through the evening. Thank you once again for stopping in for Locked On Seminoles. We'll be back in 1 second. Mazda crafts cars for those who do more than simply move. Mazda delivers confidence with every ride, with more top vehicle safety picks awards than anyone else as of August of 2025. From footwork to breathwork, athletes sweat all the details. Mazda brings this same intention to how we craft each and every model. You can make every day feel like anything but just an everyday, from smooth handling to intuitive controls. Like our players, we sweat every detail because when you make every moment count, impossible becomes irrelevant. Mazda, move and be moved. This show is also brought to you by our friends at DoorDash. It's almost the weekend again. Time to look back and crown this week's MVP. Who delivered? powered by DoorDash. Just like you can win every Saturday with DoorDash Streaks, saving more every time you order, these players delivered when it mattered most. Let's break it down. For me, it was Deuce Robinson for the Florida State Seminoles, and it really wasn't that hard to see that he was a focal point. Gus Malzahn talked about that with the Noles. He said they wanted to get him the ball after the press conference early this week, and they sure did. He had a couple touchdowns and 160 yards in the first half against East Texas A&M, whether it was a short route, whether it was over the top, or whether it was a 100 grab in the end zone. Deuce Robinson absolutely delivered. And just like Deuce Robinson delivered for Florida State, DoorDash delivers your Saturdays with DoorDash Streaks. You save every Saturday you order, stack up all season long, and you could save up to $250, including $100 in DoorDash credits. Order this Saturday. Keep the streak alive. Fuel your game day only with DoorDash. Terms apply. Promo code through 11/18. All right, let's jump back into the conversation and let's get into the chat as well. No surprise, very first person in the chat, Mike Merrick. What's up, Brian? In chat, go Noles. Mike, go nuts. What's happening, Mike? It's fun to be talking about Florida State in the situation that we're in right now because Florida State is winning handily, and Florida State is also doing so in a way that you expected the old school Noles to do. I'm glad Mike is the first comment because, quite honestly, he kind of represents the era I'm from in terms of expectations, accountability, and physicality. What I'm talking about tonight being the truth. Florida State is not an easy program to try to live up to. Like what Bowden did was unbelievable. For those who don't know, 14 consecutive seasons, 14, finishing in the top 4 in a row. That's unbelievable. I don't know if that will be able to really be conquered anytime again soon. Alabama was right there, and they might have. I'd have to check. They're probably pretty close. But those are two of the greatest runs in college athletics for any sport of all time. And to do it in an ultra-competitive situation like college football in today's era is really great. Mike also says, this team is scary good. I believe they can win the ACC. Let me expand on Mike's point right there. And again, for those of you, I'll just put this out there. This is just offense. In case you missed it, these are the 4 main categories offensively for NCAA football right now on offense. Total offense, scoring offense, rushing offense, passing offense. Total 555 a game, 9th in the country. Rushing, 295.5, 5th in the country. Passing, 260, 39th in the country. And scoring, the Noles are 5th with 54 points per game. Absolutely outstanding. They're physical at the point of attack. They throw it down the field. When you creep up, they get you either way. Everybody on that offense is accountable for each other. Listen to the press conferences. Don't listen to me. Go listen to the press conference. It is outstanding. Accountability and physicality. Florida State has done that. And now let's just talk about the ACC for a second. I had the opportunity to kind of scour the schedule a little bit, and I guess I could pull it up here for the sake of it. Florida State's ability to really do some damage begins with the Miami game. If they win that, I'm not trying to pick on anybody, they probably have a pretty clear path to the Clemson game, which is in Death Valley. That's certainly not going to be any kind of easy road game. But at the same time, that Miami game, obviously a rivalry game and all that stuff. You got Kent State, not this weekend, but the following. You go to Virginia on a Friday night. That's a 6 p.m. Kickoff on September 26th. And then you get 8 days before you host the Miami Hurricanes inside of Doak Campbell Stadium. If you get to that point and you're undefeated, you'd be 5-0. You have Pittsburgh come in the next week. I know a lot of people don't think Pitt's that good. I think they're a little better than some people believe. I think that's a team that could absolutely cause some problems, and especially with the emotional letdown, one way to win or lose against Miami. They got to be ready for that. But after that, they played probably the worst team. Not trying to pick on them either. In the Power 4 in Stanford, Florida State's accountability and physicality is going to run all over them. That's going to be a disaster. There'll be more Florida State fans literally in the stands than Stanford. That's how bad Stanford is out in California. Then on the 18th, after that game, you come home, you have a week off. Good time to recoup. You've got Wake Forest. Wake Forest is not far from the worst team, probably in the P4. they're awful. They don't have much NIL, and they just haven't really backed into that situation. And then the big game on the road, the toughest game, in my opinion, on the schedule because of the timing and everything else. Florida State at Clemson. That game is November 8th. Then you've got Virginia Tech, a team that I think by then Coach Pry will probably be fired. I don't know if anybody's seen what's going on there. They're awful. And then you have the last two games. That game is November 15th. The last two games, Florida State on a Friday night, which, again, I hate these Friday night games. They venture to Raleigh to play NC State. The Wolfpack is always a loud place. Friday night game, can't take that lightly. I know they're not great, but they got CJ Bailey. They got some good receivers, some good players on defense, just not great units overall. But a last game like that on the road, you can't take it lightly. And then they go to Gainesville to finish the season, Thanksgiving weekend. November 29th, will Florida State be completely and utterly in the playoff race at that point? I expect them to be there. I think the Florida game could be to cement whether or not they have a chance to get a bye to win the ACC, to be in the ACC title game. And again, accountability and physicality is going to be the reason for any and all of that. So right now, I think 9-3 is probably the bar that you start at. That's the floor. The schedule is really not that hard. Clemson's not as good as we thought. They're really not. Florida's definitely not. They're better than what they showed against USF, but they're not that good. They've got a lot of injuries too. Miami, we have to see. They played pretty well against Notre Dame, but they could have got beat at the end. They left a lot of meat on the bone in that game. We need to see that game, and it should be a great one. But besides those three contests, you've already beat Bama. NC State's probably the next hardest game, and I'm not sold on them. They don't have the depth they used to. So, to Mike's point, this team is scary good. I believe they can win the Atlantic Coast Conference. I do as well. And I also think if I had to rank it right now, Miami and Florida State would be my 1-2 because Clemson, I don't know what the deal is. They can't stop the run, and they don't run the ball very well, which is bizarre because they have veterans on defense and offense in the trenches that were highly recruited. They're a bizarre team. Not enough people are talking about Clemson's struggles there. I don't know what it is. It's not out of the question, regardless of who wins the first game between Florida State and Miami, there could be a rematch in the ACC title game. Don't be shocked if that's the case, and that'd be cool. Florida State, Miami in a neutral site game. I assume it's in Charlotte once again, but that would be very, very fun. From Garrett, Brian, if you had a time machine and you could go only tell past Brian one thing about how this season is going, what would you say? What would you say? That is a phenomenal question. Let me read this again. If I had a time machine and you could only tell past Brian one thing about how this season is going, what would you say? I'm going to go with Florida State is ranked number 10 going into their bye week. That would tell me all I needed to know, because obviously you're not ranked number 10 and losing to Bama. You had to beat them, and that means everything's hitting on just boom, right down the middle on all cylinders, I should say. That's what I was saying. Great question, man. I like that. I like that a lot. Garrett, once again, this offense only had 3 weeks working together before Bama. How could we not believe that they'll only get better? I agree. Defense looks great, but I'm more impressed so far by the offense. The offense has been as well orchestrated in terms of what they believed in, players working together, and then really capitalizing in quote-unquote prime moments. The deep balls by Tommy, obviously. Danzy running really hard and using good vision to hit on a couple of big plays. The screens hitting. And then the little guy like Jalen Lucas is just a nightmare. I knew he was going to be good. I didn't know he'd be this good. The catch by Squirrel White on the bomb against Bama, all that stuff. It has been really, really fun. When I come back, I'm going to talk more in the chat. We're also going to discuss a little bit more about the defense and some of the expectations. I want to hear from the fans. What do you want to see from Florida State between now and the time the Noles host the Canes on October 4th? I say again, what do you want to hear or what do you want to see between now and the time that FSU hosts Miami on October 4th inside of Doak Campbell Stadium? We will be right back with more Locked On Seminoles. Today's show is brought to you by our friends over at FanDuel, and the NFL season is here. FanDuel is making sure you're ready for kickoff with a can't-miss offer. Right now, new customers can bet $5, and if your bet wins, you'll get $300 in bonus bets to use across the FanDuel app. You can do about anything you want with that money. You can bet on the basic lines on NFL games, NFL MVP, halftime scores, over-unders, player props, parlays, or anything else. FanDuel makes it more exciting each and every time football is kicked off. So are you ready to play? Download the FanDuel app now by visiting FanDuel.com to get started. That's FanDuel.com to place your first $5 bet. This show is also brought to you by our friends at Monarch Money. Monarch Money is an easy way for you to stay on top of everything. And most people can't even name all their financial accounts or even what they're worth, whether it's 401ks, properties, investments, or anything else. And when you don't have the full picture of your financial situation, you can end up leaving money on the table. That's where Monarch Money comes into play. It's an all-in-one personal financial tool that brings your entire financial life together in one clean, easy-to-use interface on your laptop or on your phone. Monarch is built for people with busy lives. If you put off putting your finances in an organized fashion, Monarch is there to help you out. Monarch does the heavy lifting for you so you can link all your accounts in minutes, see clear data visuals, and get all the categorization for your spending, making it easy for you to finally feel like you're in control of your money without ever touching a single spreadsheet. Most importantly, it's efficient. You and or your loved one can have everything in one place with the Monarch Money app, so you know what you have in a very short amount of time to make it easier for you to be all over everything you have with right now and your long term for you and all your loved ones. Don't let financial opportunities slip through the cracks. Use code LOCKEDONCollege at monarchmoney.com in your browser or half off your first year. That's 50% off your first year at monarchmoney.com with code LOCKEDONCollege. All right, we're going to talk more about Florida State now through the chat and everything that's going on in there. What do they have to do between now and the time they play Miami to really be ready for that incredible rivalry game? I want to hear your thoughts. I'm going to jump in the chat, but I want to give you my number one thing. Somebody brought it up, I think it was Garrett, talking about the ability for the offense. It's been tremendous. We do need to see another step up on the defense, and here's what I mean. Turnovers. East Texas A&M really didn't turn the ball over, and they weren't that poorly coached. They were pretty well coached. They just didn't have enough players. Florida State didn't turn them over as much as I thought. You're going up against Carson Beck when you get to that game. And, of course, you got to beat Virginia first, but this is all part of the process. You got to look at it through the toughest opponent, in my opinion. When you get to him, he's a guy that doesn't miss much. Here's an example. Florida State is going to be facing a quarterback that when he went up against Notre Dame, when they played zone, he carved them up. 13 out of 16 when they were in zone. Tony White's defense plays more zone than man. And I'm sure he's going to have some things that he's saving. He's not going to admit that, but all coaches do this. But how much man do they use, and how much can they confuse a really veteran quarterback? Turnovers. For me, that's the biggest thing. If you have a different take, that's fine. And here's an extension of what I mean by turnovers. They've got to put more pressure on Beck than what he's used to seeing. A lot more. When he played at Georgia, he played in front of a great line. Miami has a great one too. It may be the best line in college football. It's arguable. They're certainly in the conversation. That much I do know. If Florida State can't create pressure with 4, they got to be really creative and get home with pressure to possibly create some of those turnovers. You need to be at least +1 in these rivalry games that usually come down to the wire to give yourself some breathing room. So for me, from now until the time that Florida State plays Miami, creating turnovers. And it's something that Norvell has talked about, Coach White. They're close, but they have to get the ball out. Picks, fumbles, all that. They have to get the ball out. So what do you have to say about it, and why? Is it something else? Do you like the way that Florida State is playing in terms of their defense? Would you change it up? I don't know what it's going to be, but for me, again, it's about turnovers. Mike Merrick, I truly love the aggression on both sides of the ball. 100%. As I've said about 10 times already on the show, accountability and physicality. Florida State is not taking any prisoners. They're playing downhill, and they're making it happen. They're not worried about what anybody else thinks. They're just playing their brand and doing what they do. When you take care of your own group through and through, and you trust in each other, the person next to you on the right and the one on the left, it usually works out pretty well. Garrett, what is your recruiting ranking expectations? I think anything less than a top 10 class, if we continue our success, would be a disappointment. There's some truth to that, but it's also a timing issue. The way recruiting works now, very few kids are still uncommitted. I don't know how many they would have to flip or who they'd have to flip. I look at it more from I want to see them get one more elite player, a guy that could walk in and play like Chroma, for instance. That would probably put them in the top 10, but I don't want to see grab bag. There's a very fine line. They're going to have a lot of teams or a lot of recruits call, hey, I want to visit this and that because Florida State's playing better. I get it. Having kids visit and accepting commitments are two different things. I need to see the right players want to come, because the way it's going so far, and if you saw my podcast on Tuesday afternoon talking about this, you would understand. If you haven't, it's all about recruiting. Make sure you check it out. I talked about a bunch of recruits that are coming for the Canes game. Several are 27. They have a chance at possibly a top 5 class in the class of 27. They've done a good job working that, and they've got a longer path to getting to know those kids. Remember, Tony White and just Tim Harris and all the guys on the staff that came over, they recruited a lot of the same kids from the other schools these guys came from, but not all. And especially a guy like White, like he doesn't know the Georgia, Florida area quite the way like Tim Harris does. This second round, meaning the class of 27, he's going to have a full year with them, plus all the defensive staff, Evan Cooper, etc., all the offensive staff, Herb Hand, etc. All those 2027 kids, they're going to have a better chance to work them after this season for all the spring visits and the off-season workouts, have them in for basketball games, whatever, spring practices. That's where I would put my attention. Now, again, if elite kids want to come this year, that's cool. I'm down with it. But outside of that, you got to be very selective. You want to build your culture. You don't want guys that just are coming to Florida State for NIL or for fame. You want guys that they're starting their journey, not ending it. It's a really specific deal. They did a great job this year, and they did it through the portal, which is actually really hard. Let's see here. Jeremy Wilson, still way early. Oh, it is still very early, but that's the point. What do we got to do to see what's next? Next question here, Garrett. I know D-Jack does a lot that doesn't show up on the stat sheet, but I would love to see him wreck the backfield with some sacks and TFLs. Totally get it. He's getting double teamed, though, a lot. If you play nose guard, your stats will never be great. They will never be great. But what he does for the rest of the defense is impossible to explain. So let me just give you one barometer. Obviously, Florida State's defense is pretty darn good. If, let's just say, Darryl twisted his ankle and he only missed one quarter, exactly one quarter. So he missed 25% of the game. And then you looked at the rest of the game stats in any way, shape, or form against that one quarter. I guarantee you Florida State would be in trouble by comparison because they don't have anybody else like it. It's the body type, the body type, the body type. You know, like in real estate, they say location, location, location. They just don't make many players like Darryl. It's like having the perfect home on the edge of a lake that has access to the interstate within 5 miles, but it's still away from the crowd. Like every little thing is perfect. Darryl's frame is perfect for playing the position in Tony White's defense. There aren't 4 of those guys in college football. There may not be 2. If he's in the lineup, Florida State is better because the other team's offensive coordinator has to account for him, or at least try to, on every single play with more than one blocker, or risk their star running back or quarterback getting smashed. There is no price tag you can put on how valuable that is. Accountability and physicality. Darryl is the physicality. You got to account for it. If you don't, you're going to get crushed. He will be a guy that gets doubled in the NFL. That's the best compliment I can give him. I know that's not a stat, but that's why he's going to make probably $50 million over the next 10 years, if not more. He's going to make a lot of money. He could be a $150 million guy. If he wants it bad enough, there's only few guys like come out of college at his size. He's well over 330 and can move laterally and chase guys down. They got to double him. So he is a really special player when he's on. Goatiest GOAT, going 15-0 and bringing national title to T-Town. Obviously, that's what we all want, but how do you do it? I think the biggest thing, again, is the defense. I don't think it's an easy situation. I know that getting the ball out and creating turnovers was honestly not just a problem last year for Florida State. It wasn't talked about enough because the offense was so embarrassing. But they didn't get a turnover for like 6 weeks in a row last year. Like literally, you can go look, it was insane. Florida State need to see that against Kent State, who's obviously terrible. Matter of fact, I'll look up a couple stats while I'm here, just out of curiosity. But what do we think the situation is going to be if Florida State can get 1.5 turnovers a game for pretty much the rest of the season? I think pretty much the floor would be 10-2. Like if they just start creating a few, they haven't really done much with the turnover department yet. So think about the offense kind of staying at this level, just being so locked in. And that's being very kind. Locked in would be very nice. I would imagine Florida State could hit, I'd say with 10 games left, at least 6 times, I would expect 40 points. If any game that they create 2 turnovers, 40 points should be expected because the offense is so dominant. You got to figure one of those is either going to be a score directly, like a scoop and score, or put you in an advantageous situation for a short field. So, especially against, again, not picking on anybody here, but Virginia Tech, Virginia, Wake Forest, those schools, they don't have the same talent as Florida State. If they turn them over, Florida State has a chance to absolutely smoke them. Kent State, not very good when it comes to their ability to do anything offensively, throwing the ball. They're 97th in the nation, 187 yards. That's not very good. Let's see what their scoring offense is. I imagine it's probably pretty embarrassing there as well. Kent State, for the record, has always been one of the worst. Oh, wow. They are 113th in the nation, 17.5 points a game. Good luck. If Kent State's struggling against other teams, what are they going to do against Florida State's defense? That's got a chance to be a goose egg or 10 points or less. Florida State should be in a pretty good spot. Next up, Mike. I like the last comment. I'm with you, Brian, about the defense taking the ball away. Yeah, it's really the last part for the defense. They're shockingly, and all the credit in the world to them, they have figured out a complex defense pretty quick. Hats off to the coaching staff and the players. It's congruent here, 50% each way. Tony's been steadfast on his expectations, and he's gotten the results he's wanted for the most part. I'm sure it's not perfect, but for the first 2 games, going from predominantly man to predominantly zone, totally different concept and how you use the safeties, almost like a linebacker. There's no way that, at least off air, remember, press conferences, it's show pony time. Tony's not as bad as some others, but there's never 100% honest press conference, ever. Everything is about politics in college athletics too. But by and large, think about Tony's press conferences after the first 2 games, anything he spoke with the media. He's a pretty harsh guy, but there's not a lot he can complain about. Tackling's way better than it was last year. Run gap fits way better than last year. Corralling the quarterback, forcing him into the pocket, not allowing him to escape, which Florida State was terrible at. That's something that they're way better at. And then finally, just creating havoc. Not knowing which safety is coming. Not knowing which defensive lineman is going to stunt or going to slant, whatever. They caught Alabama off guard. They certainly caught East Texas A&M off guard. And they just wiped the floor of people with that stuff. So if the defense can continue that, the ball's going to come out more. It's kind of law of averages. I don't know when it's going to slow down or when it's going to be a situation where the defense is just so dialed in they can cause a bunch of them. Like, I'm sure their head's still spinning a little bit and they're just playing 100 mile an hour and thinking they got it right. By middle of the season, Florida State's defense, just through the reps, they're going to know it's right. I think some of the turnovers will probably be more likely on the back end of the schedule. Like they're more likely to get turnovers against Clemson just because of the timing of the game, even though it's in Death Valley, than they are against Miami. And part of that senior quarterback from Miami, but Klubnik's a senior as well. So I would imagine that Florida State's in a pretty good spot for as early as they are into that D. But let's see where they are in 4 or 5 weeks when everybody truly feels comfy. That matters too. That really does matter. Goatiest GOAT. Saban didn't even do 14 straight top 4 finishes. He came close. That's the one I was wondering about because, like, outside of them, like in my lifetime, there's been nobody else. USC had a run for about 5 years. Obviously, Florida State. Obviously, Alabama. Miami, they had probation and stuff in the 90s, so they didn't do it. They were fairly close. That's it, man. Like, Nebraska was good for 7-8 years from 93 through about 2000, 2001. They're in that range. Colorado and Notre Dame both had like 5 to 8 year area. They were really good, but that's still not double digits. The run by Florida State is one of the most unique in college football or college athletics in general in their history because let's be honest. Football is the financial engine, whether most people want to admit it or not, in the FBS. It's not even close. There's only a few schools that it's not, and those probably are struggling. It's about butts and seats, and obviously football stadiums are massive. So keep that in mind too. I'm going to wrap up the show here, and I thank everybody for stopping in. I'm going to do something like this next week and focus more on the defense, dive into some players. Be thinking about which guys you want to talk about, what have you. Drop comments between now, and next week, early in the week, in any of the YouTube comments or whatever. I'll be happy to adjust or add questions, if you will, and we'll have some fun with it. But thank you once again. I truly appreciate you stopping in. Check it out, Locked On Seminoles. Make sure you're becoming an everydayer and make sure that, quite frankly, this is as much fun for you as it is for me. If you got questions, if you got comments, anything else, I'm here, man. I love to do this stuff. College football is a blast. Let's enjoy it. Florida State's got a great chance now to go to the college football playoff. They're trending in that direction. They just got to keep on the same path with all the accountability and all the physicality they've had. Stay with those 2 things, and I think they can make it there. We will see you again soon on Locked On Seminoles.